Hello, beautifuls. Let's look over some of the basic layouts and elements of what is involved inside of the gene key chart. That way, when you're looking at a chart, whether it's your own or someone else's, you have a basic understanding of what it is that you're looking at and what it is that you're seeing, as well as what some of the pieces might change and which things remain constant. Okay, here we go. Inside the elements of a gene key chart, we have 3 journeys laid out in front of us. This outer ring here, the spheres or rings, balls that are colored in green. Never mind, this one's partially blue and this one's partially red. We'll get into that in a moment. These outer 4 of this gene key chart is known as the activation sequence. This activation sequence is a very physical journey. It's all about discovering your own internal genius and also the things that help you to be stable. It's about finding and activating your unique purpose by discovering what factors are going to be constant, ones that might inspire you to grow, whether you like it or not, and what brings you to your greatest health. Okay, the next one is going to be the Venus sequence. We're looking at the red here. These, partially the one down here, these 4, and then partially this one up here. So these 5 spheres represent your Venus sequence, the second part of the journey. The Venus is based in the mental and the emotions. It is the heart path journey. It is the one that deals with our relationships, our partnerships, the things we attract to us in the world, as well as our own emotions and the healings of our own heart. And these are all the spheres in red. Last of the journeys is the pearl sequence. Okay, so it's this half here that's red and blue, these 2 here, and this back up to the very top one where we began again, right? So this is a journey that repeats back in on itself. This blue sphere journey is called the pearl sequence. And the pearl sequence is very much of a spiritual connection. How do we take our sustainability, our heart-based journey, and how do we do something with it? It's about collaboration. It's also about prosperity and abundance. What do we and can we bring into the world from a place of fullness and openness in our heart and grounded stability in our bodies? This is all about the connection to the tribal frequency. It's to your soul family, and it helps to catalyze those currents of prosperity. And they're all the ones that are in blue. So those are the 3 journeys that are hidden within this gene key chart. So then there's another element that's the 64 keys. Okay, the 64 keys are not represented here. Sort of. This 5, 6 right here that says gene key, that 5 would be one of the 64 keys. In each person's chart, these 11 spheres, so the next thing we have is 11 spheres, each sphere is a home or a resting place for a particular key, right? And each chart is going to be different. It's going to be based on what that person's alignment was when they were born, right? It gives an indication of that journey. Each of those keys that reside within each one of these spheres has with it a 3-fold frequency band known as the shadow, gift, and essence, which I'll get into in a moment. Within these 11 spheres, these center ones here in the middle, these 7 spheres, all have programming partners of their own. So ultimately, there's 18 potential keys that one might consider for their own chart. All of the different lines that you see that move back and forth between these spheres that show the journey and how it goes, those are called the pathways. There's 14 pathways. Each pathway, so for example, this core stability pathway is located between the radiant sphere and the purpose sphere. And those pathways indicate that what the flavor of the journey is between those 2. Okay? Each one of these spheres' locations also has a deep bearing on what it is that key represents. And when we go through this as by matter of doing the course, we will be studying one sphere, one pathway, and a second sphere together at a time. So we'll study 2 plus its pathway. Within each of these keys, so going one step deeper, we also have a line association. And that's up here where it says this line number. And here it points to the number 6. Each sphere has its own particular layer and depth of what the 6 lines could represent within that particular sphere, as well as the 6 lines having a relationship to themselves. I will do a whole separate video on the lines themselves. Just wanted you to know the placements and where things can be found. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the spectrums within each one of the keys. So this is talking about those 64 keys, right? Of the 64, each one of them has 3 different, let's call them facets, okay, or 3 different layers. And in this case, I look at it as it in an almost circular dynamic. That's why we're looking at the side of this stairwell here, okay? So notice that here on the shadow side of thing, it says, put your full weight here. You need to put your full weight into the shadow to fully see it, to have the realization of what its next frequency as a gift could look like. Once you are working at this gift level, and you've spent years working through all of the lessons of the shadows, and you've moved through to the gifts, then there's also this soul essence that can come out through your actions and your being. This essence, the siddhi or siddhi, is a deep part of the underpinnings of all of what's happening with this shadow and this gift. It's the deep essence behind why it exists to begin with. And so let's go into them just a little bit deeper. Down here in this shadow, the shadow frequency relates to all human suffering. It emerges from the ancient wiring inside the brain that's based on individual survival, and it's linked directly to fear. It's the fear for the survival of the self. The unconscious presence of fear that runs through our system continues to enhance our belief that we are separate from the world around us. Right? That's why it's an individual survival instinct. If we knew we weren't separate, we wouldn't be concerned with our own unique survival, because we would understand that our survival is based on the community, is based on the connection, is based on more than just us. And when we have that belief that we're separate from the world enhanced, that deep-seated belief propagates a victim mentality. And so that's why we study the victim states of being in the shadow frequency. When we live at a shadow frequency band, then we literally live within a culture of blame and shame. We blame the forces and people around us that we believe are not part of us. They are separate from us. We're not that. And we can also feel shame when we believe that we alone are responsible for our lives, because how can we be enough to do it, right? So it's a frequency that it's a holding frequency unless we change our attitude about it. Once we begin to understand how the shadow frequency controls so much of the world, including ourselves, we can realize how simple it is to move out of its grasp. Simply by shifting our attitude, our perspective. You can release the currents that are active within and beneath the shadow frequency, and your life can take on a whole different purpose, whole different meaning, where your very source of suffering becomes your source of salvation, becomes your way of understanding. That shadow that we hate about ourselves or about someone else can actually be our very gifts and strengths. They're just right now at the shadow level in a low frequency that's based in self and survival. Some of these shadows are more hidden than others. What we need is a willingness, a want to find them, and a key. Right? We need something that's going to trigger that realization. So that separation, survival, and fear-based mentality is this shadow. And when we put our full weight into what that shadow is trying to teach us, then we get to step up, right? The gift. The frequency band related to the human genius and the open-heartedness. It can lead to great insight and great creativity. When we take a look at our shadow perspective and we pause in a moment of angst, however repressive or internalized or expressive, reactive, when we can take a moment and pause and we can see what is playing out, then we are stepping it into that gift frequency. It's based in the realization, the understanding and seeing the shadow, as well as choosing a different state of being, choosing a different attitude, where we become of service to self and we become of service to the other, as opposed to being stuck in a victim state, right? Those are the two biggest differences. One of the hallmarks of arriving at this gift frequency or working with this gift frequency is the ability to take full responsibility for one's own thoughts, feelings, words, and actions, to take responsibility for one's karma, for what you create. At this frequency, one no longer identifies as a victim to any perceivable external stimulus, which means that they understand that if they are in a place of victimhood, they're in a victimhood dynamic because of their own attitude, because of their own mind not wanting to be where they are. You can see where the art of contemplation becomes very helpful in this process, because we need to both allow as well as make effort to change and shift our perspectives. The last one, the seti, the essence, the state of being. It's an energetic expression and an energetic intention, right? It's a divine gift and a permanent realization. It's the full embodiment of stepping into the gift. The Siddhic state only comes about when all vestiges of the shadow, particularly at a collective level, okay? So I'm going to pause here for a second. This is not necessarily a goal or an aim that you should remove all shadow states and only embrace the Siddhic state. This is a thing that needs to happen at a collective level before it is fully realized. There are 64 siddhis, and each one refers to a different expression of divine realization. Even though the realization is the same in each case, its expression will differ and sometimes even appear contradictory. The siddhis spoken of in Gene Keys are not to be confused with the way they are understood in certain other mythical traditions. Again, beginning with the beginner's mind would be the wisest course of action here. The 64 siddhi are not obstacles on the path to realization, but they are the very expression and fruition of realization in its many facets. All right, I look forward to delving with you further. My name is Rainey Ford. I'm an herbalist and inner cartographer, founder of Nematon and Mountain Woman Medicine. If you are interested in purchasing herbal medicines or discovering your inner mapping, please visit my website in the description below. Have a wonderful day, beautifuls.